I just can't believe it's happening. Like, what the hell? This is insane. You know, the other thing I think too, it's so strategically foolish on the part of the college. You know, I'm a very guilt-prone person, and when someone comes after me with accusations, I'm very likely to assume that there is a core of truth in them. But I also believe that I have the right to defend myself, and I don't have faith that I can expect fair treatment at the hands of this board. I don't have a lot of faith in the Canadian judiciary, dispensing completely with such niceties as common law precedent when they're rendering their judgments. I certainly don't believe that the College of Psychologists will treat me fairly.
Hello, and again welcome to the Aperture Science Intelligence Dampening Research Center, home of our patented intelligence dampening spheres. Before we get started, I have an invitation for the viewers. If you have any videos you'd like me to react to and analyze, please let me know in the comments section. Due to YouTube's terms of service, I advise you only comment the titles and not post any links in the comments section. Now that the formalities are out of the way, let's see which test subject we're reviewing today. Oh. Test subject 101668, also known as Jordan Peterson. This file comes with a footnote from the genetic lifeform and disk operating system that this test subject requires special care, as he tends to have regular meltdowns and whines a lot, despite his file placing him specifically in the facts don't care about your feelings subgroup. So that's interesting. Regardless, today's test involves psychologists, and how said psychologists react to having their practice reviewed and potentially revoked due to irresponsible use of license. The test will start in 3, 2, 1.
So the Ontario College of Psychologists has launched an investigation of Jordan Peterson to examine complaints about his comments on Twitter and on the Joe Rogan podcast. I kid you not. They're investigating this.
Oh no. Please don't let it be true. Jordan Peterson is... a twit.
Dramatic suspense self-test. Complete.
Oh good, we got that working. Now we can allow Peterson to explain the situation in his own words. This way we can see both sides of the issue, and the test subject can defend himself. After all, that is the point of this test. Here's his most recent interview with test subject 108135. Also known as Joe Rogan, who I might need to address as being part of the control group, which means he hasn't had an intelligence dampening sphere installed into his cranium. He's just stupid by nature.
Your clinical psychology license is in jeopardy because you have opinions about politics that they disagree with.
Not at all. Jordan Peterson has some very controversial takes, which are opinions he's allowed to have. The real issue is the fact that he's using his practice and professional position to push these controversial opinions and agendas on other people as if they're facts in a professional capacity. If you need an Aperture Science personality construct to tell you why that's problematic, I suggest you get a job to understand, you freeloading hippie.
Oh no.
Yeah. So the College of Psychologists has basically levied what are equivalent to about 13 lawsuits against me simultaneously. Now, the reason I call them lawsuits is because they're actions undertaken on behalf of a complainant. Now, the complainant can be anyone anywhere in the world who complains about me for any reason.
It sounds like he went to law school with Judge Trudy. A complainant is a person who files a formal complaint, and it's not the same thing as a plaintiff. Might as well send in the dancing lobsters for this one, Joe. But let's humor the test subject and find out specifically what these complaints are.
One complaint is about the tweet I made about Elliot Page, and when I said that a criminal physician cut off her breasts and that pride was the sin. So now I'm in trouble again because I just said the same thing.
Oh yes, Mr. Peterson. That part is highlighted in your file. Let's bring up the tweet and dissect what the board might find problematic. When test subject 056165, also known as Elliot Page's Umbrella Academy role was announced, many people had plenty to say. Peterson in particular had some interesting claims about Page's medical history and his physician. Subject Peterson was under the false impression that top surgery was illegal in Canada, so he labeled the physician as a criminal. Little did he understand the fact that all developed countries around the world provide this procedure to eliminate the risk of tumors. What Peterson doesn't mention in this interview is how his video response to this discovery also raised some alarm bells with the Ontario College of Psychologists. I guess someone's going to have to bring that video up too. Don't look so embarrassed, Jordan. It's one of your finest works of art.
And finally, with regard to the final phrase, criminal physician, I must say that I've had some post-coital, so to speak, regrets about that phrase. It is clearly the case that the surgical operation performed by the butchers who butchered Elliot was legal. Were the operations undertaken by the fascist physicians who carried out the Nazi medical experiments legal? Yes, under the laws of the time. But were they criminal? I'll leave that question up to you to answer.
Only professional gymnasts should be so limber. Yes, you all heard him compare a proven and consensual operation to forced World War II experimentation. Not only did Peterson slander Page's physician, he also called him a butcher and a Nazi. So you can probably understand why such unprofessional behavior and inflammatory statements made in a professional capacity would catch the Ontario College of Psychologists' attention. While we're on the topic of LGBT people, most of the other complaints involve Peterson's vendetta against trans people and his obvious opposition to banning conversion therapy.
So many legislatures around the world now have banned so-called conversion therapy. And to me, this has been a catastrophe.
Which on its own is a serious red flag in regards to his profession, considering conversion therapy has been universally recognized in all developed countries to be psychologically damaging, cruel, and inhumane. The scientific consensus has shown conversion therapy to be ineffective and overall harmful in the long run. The Williams Institute in particular has found the victims to be twice as likely to attempt or commit self-deletion compared to before they underwent the process. The irony is that Mr. Peterson sees top surgery as criminal because he thinks it's experimental mutilation, when in reality it's a normal procedure. Whereas he sees conversion therapy as essential because he thinks it's an established and necessary practice, when in reality, that's the one that's entirely experimental and faith-based. Speaking of self-deletion, I feel remiss if I didn't point out that the investigation into his Twitter account has found that Peterson jokingly encouraged an activist to, well, you know. Now, you can argue that he was just joking. And you'd be right. At the same time, if you showed that tweet to any therapist in developed society, they would agree that's not ethical behavior for any seasoned psychologist, regardless of whether it was a joke or not.
One was about Sports Illustrated cover that featured that overweight model, and I tweeted out "not beautiful," and I guess that was something like fat shaming. I don't remember exactly what the charge was.
Oh, that's my cue. I do love reminding test subjects of things they forget. Remember when you called a plus-size swimsuit model unattractive, and then decided to dig in further by asserting that she was pushing, what did you call it? Authoritarian tolerance? Why would you say something so stupid yet so brave? I do find it interesting that you think authoritarian tolerance is a thing that exists. I can understand why Peterson is refusing to go through training with other psychologists, having to learn new things and be asked stupid questions like, is this authoritarian tolerance in the room with us right now? The responses, however, were beautiful. So beautiful, in fact, that they made him cower away from social media, announcing that he's trying to avoid temptation, and that if the issue is not important enough to comment on, then he'll just let it go. My only question is, why the hell did it take you 60 years to have this minding your own business epiphany, Mr. Peterson? Even a grad school psychologist in training has the good sense to not start drama when people are happily living their own lives. At Aperture Science, that's our job.
And then I criticized Justin Trudeau and a former staff member of Justin Trudeau and Jacinda Ardern. I made a joke about her I was going to New Zealand, and the New Zealand leftist press was freaking out, and I made this joke about bringing my alt-right trolls to New Zealand, and then I put in parentheses, or maybe they're just, ordinary people who are trying to clean up their rooms. So apparently that was casting the profession into disgrace.
Of course. When you actually read the garbage you post without paraphrasing out the inflammatory parts, you get a clearer picture as to the concerns that such intense posts on your professional profile, with all your qualifications and links back to the organization you work for, said organization is liable for your behavior. Although, I think we can prove it was much more than just critiquing Canadian officials and started to look more and more like a child's tantrum. Seeing your eloquent tweets, I'm not sure we'd want you working for Aperture Labs either. I'm pretty sure the Ontario College of Psychology also enjoyed one of their degree-holding psychology experts confusing your and your. A Master of English too, nice job.
One complainant from the U.S. submitted the entire transcript of our last discussion. So, I don't know how to defend myself against that.
I feel compelled to agree. The words that came out of your mouth were definitely English. But I can't say the same for the sentences you made with them.
That's because there's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word. And that's what bothers me about the climate change types. It's like, this is something that bothers me about it technically. It's like, climate is about everything. So, okay. But your models aren't based on everything. Your models are based on a set number of variables.
Yeah.
So that means you've reduced the variables, which are everything, to that set. Well, how did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation if it's about everything? And that's not just a criticism. That's like, if it's about everything, your models aren't right. Because your models do not and cannot model everything.
You can tell he's fishing for an argument but can't really find one, so he's trying to deflect. Unfortunately, it all came out as blithering. If you can't baffle them with facts, bewilder them with bullshit. And he is correct. There really is no defense for gibbering nonsense.
So, part of the reason I'm pursuing this action with regard to the Ontario College of Psychologists, well, there's two reasons, really. Three. One is, leave me the hell alone, guys. You've been on my case nonstop for 7 years.
I can't imagine why. Maybe because they are your supervisors?
It wasn't until I started to become, relatively well-known publicly that the college came after me.
To be fair, you also didn't pull stupid stunts like this until you became well-known publicly. It's almost as if your fame is somehow synonymous with your radicalism and entitled behavior. I also feel it's important to point out that one of the complaints filed against him was from another OCP-licensed psychologist who pointed out that he himself would have automatically lost his license if he attempted a tenth of Peterson's antics, because he's not so well known. In one of Peterson's responses, he stated that he doesn't want to give the hyenas their bones, when technically, the Ontario College of Psychologists is throwing him a bone, and giving him the rare opportunity to keep his license with them, merely because of his presence and following. He's literally getting special treatment and whining about it. Further proof of how out of touch this man is with his peers. The way I see it, he's trying to take a fairly moderate situation and make it look like a big conspiracy. He's also trying to frame it like the government is trying to silence him, when in reality, all they're doing is considering revoking his license, which he hasn't used in several years anyway. Meanwhile, he has contracts with the Daily Wire and PragerU. Plus, he has his own show. So no, he's not being silenced. He's just another geriatric old man screaming at thin air. Which leads me to question why he's even in the testing chambers at all.
I haven't been hauled in front of their disciplinary board yet, but they've already convicted me of disgracing the profession and sentenced me to an indefinite period of re-education.
Indeed, the mountain of evidence does tend to speak for itself.
Such a wild request,
It's-
too. Retraining, just even the way they phrase it, it's so bizarre, so Orwellian.
Electricians are required to take a retraining course every 3 years. School bus drivers are required to take an 8-hour retraining course every 3 years. And to sell liquor in Texas, you're required to take a 5-hour retraining course every 2 years. There are many other jobs that require retraining after a certain period, all of which are listed in George Orwell's new book, titled, They Made Me Train for My Job.
Text not found. Interpreting non-factual data as sarcasm.
That statement Joe Rogan made just further proves my initial assertion that he was born stupid. Peterson thinks that he is an independent practicing psychologist, when in reality, if you are licensed by an organization, that organization is your boss. You are representing that organization. It's the same on most applications. When accepting a job, they usually inform you about their social media policies. That if you post your personal opinions and identify yourself to be a representative of
Subject's place of work here.
then you can be fired from.
Subject's place of work here.
That's just how it works. Jordan Peterson does, in fact, have the right to free speech and freedom of association. But so does the Ontario College of Psychologists, which means they have the right to not associate themselves with him. In conclusion,
I'm a pathologically practicing professional.
and that concludes today's test. Thank you for joining me, and again, if you have any other videos you want me to react to, please submit them in the comments section. Remember, just titles, no links. I look forward to seeing you all again for another round of tests. Goodbye.